Absolute perfection is absolutely unattainable. 完璧主義。怖いんじゃないですか。僕にとっては怖いです。Not to get too philosophical right from the get-go, but sometimes your worst enemy is yourself. Now, of course, you don't intend on harming yourself. Most of us don't anyways. But sometimes what holds you back the most doesn't come from some external source, doesn't come from the outside. Sometimes it comes from within. And there's no better example of this than the poisonous mentality of perfectionism. The idea that things can be 100% perfect. The idea that everything has to go exactly perfectly right. Mind you, none of this is crazy if we lived in a cartoon or an anime or a utopia, which is a hypothetical world where everything goes right, where everything is amazing, peaceful, harmonious, and perfect. Look, I don't know about you, but last time I checked, we most definitely don't live in a utopia. So, perfectionism would make sense only if we lived in a perfectly perfect world, but we don't live in such a world, so it's utter nonsense. But please, let me elaborate. One problem with perfectionism is that no matter how good you think you are, or how good you think you could get, it's gonna end up holding you back. Because no matter how good you will ultimately be at something, you will never be perfect. No one is. No one is perfect. We simply are not perfect. Absolute perfection is absolutely unattainable, meaning it can't be achieved. But that's not a bad thing, though. If anything, all that means is you will always improve. You will always have something to work on. There will always be room for growth. The problem with perfectionism is that it assumes that perfection is real, that it's something you can actually reach. But the thing is, perfection is an abstract concept, meaning it's an idea that only exists in our minds. If you were to visualize progress as an upwards projecting arrow that generally keeps going up, then perfection in our minds would be as if the arrow has a final destination that it'll reach, that there's a finish line that the arrow will one day cross, and once it does, it will have achieved perfection. But that's simply not how real life works. Like I said, there's always going to be room for improvement, room for growth. There really is no finish line, no true perfection. Another problem with perfectionism is that perfectionists, people who suffer from perfectionism, are inherently scared of making mistakes. They know that mistakes are inevitable, that mistakes will happen along the way, but they assume that one day they'll be so good, they'll be so perfect, if you will, that they'll pretty much stop making mistakes. And while it is true that with time, with experience, you are less likely to make mistakes, you are not immune from it. Meaning that one way or the other, you will mess something up. You will make mistakes. And the good thing here is that each mistake is a lesson. And as cliche as it sounds, it is 100% true. If you're into self-improvement, if you're into bettering yourself and whatnot, if you proactively try to work on yourself, that each mistake you make is hopefully one less mistake you won't make again. No one likes making mistakes. Nobody does it on purpose. They're just inevitable. They're just lessons on what not to do next time. And again, because perfection is not real, doesn't mean you will learn from your mistakes right away and perfectly, that you will never make the same type of mistake ever again. No, but if you try, genuinely try to learn from it, then each mistake is a lesson on how not to repeat that same mistake. Let's look at another visual example. Imagine a bullseye and some darts. Again, I know, very cliche. We've heard these examples and metaphors a bunch of times, but they're kind of true though. So follow me here. Imagine you're in a room with a bullseye, and there's a limited number of darts. But there's also a timer in this room. But actually, you know what? Not a timer, but a stopwatch. So it's not counting down, it's counting up. You don't know when it'll stop, unlike with the timer, because it counts down, you know exactly when it'll stop once it reaches 0. But with a stopwatch, it's only counting up. And you know for a fact that one day it'll stop. You just don't know when exactly. Hi, new angle. For more details on how to get better at English, check the links in the doobly-doo. Okay, got it? Stopwatch, bullseye, and darts. So, you know that one day, the stopwatch will actually stop and you won't be able to throw any more darts. The darts will just vanish. They'll just disappear. You've got a limited amount of time, a fixed amount of time for you to try to throw some darts. But you know what? Let's say you're a perfectionist. Again, you know that the stopwatch is counting up and you know you have a limited number of darts, but you're kind of scared to throw one. You know you might miss, and you really don't want to miss. You want to get it right. Actually, because you're a perfectionist, you don't want to get it right. You want it perfect. And so perfectionism here holds you back. You hesitate to throw even one dart. It's too scary, and your immediate expectations are too high. You want it to be perfect. But here's the thing. As the very famous saying goes, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. In fact, darts that aren't thrown are the furthest they'll ever be from hitting the bullseye. Quick disclaimer, there's an important thing you gotta keep in mind. The word perfectionism, depending on who you ask, can have either good or bad connotations. And all that means is, to some people it's a good word and to others it's not. But that doesn't automatically mean they disagree though. They just use the word differently. Some people call themselves perfectionists, but they're not the type of perfectionists I'm talking about here. They're trying to say they just want to do things the best way they can. They don't like things to be sloppy or half-baked. They try their best to make things as cool as they possibly can. And I respect that. Really, all power to you. I respect that mentality of, not wanting things to be sloppy. I respect that mentality of self-improvement. We pretty much agree on the substance. We agree on the mindset side of things. We agree on the meaning behind our words. On a slightly personal note, perfectionism has done a lot of damage to me. That is to say that I did a lot of damage to myself, with that mentality, with that mindset. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm still working on it, one step at a time, trying to peel off these layers of perfectionism. But it's really not easy. Even now, as I'm filming this video, I do a ridiculous amount of retakes. It's crazy unhealthy. You have no idea just how much time this takes. And I know that it shouldn't, but that's okay. Again, one step at a time, I'll get better at it. I'll slowly but surely peel off those layers of perfectionism. While perfection is an abstract concept that truly is unattainable, we can strive for it. Meaning, we can always try to get close to it. Never actually getting there, because we'll always make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. And things won't be perfect. But in our attempt to be the best versions of ourselves, in our journey of striving for perfection, we get just a little closer to it. っていうことで、ここに終わりにしたいと思います。でも、聞きたいことあります。皆さんは、完璧主義に関して何か問題を経験したことはありますか？どんな経験でしたか？どんな問題でしたか？もし、随分前のことなら、どうやって乗り越えましたか？ぜひコメント欄で教えてください。で、最後まで見てくれて ありがとうございます。じゃあ、また次の動画でお会いしましょう。